Welcome back to Mastering Public Health. After the attacks of 2001, one question echoed through every level of government. How do we make sure we are never caught this unprepared again? The answer became a decade long effort to build systems, stockpiles, and early warnings for the next emergency, whatever form it took. In part 2, we look at how a nation prepares for the worst, from the command structures that bring order to chaos to the medicine kept waiting on standby. Start with what failed. When planners studied both the World Trade Center and later Hurricane Katrina, the same two weaknesses appeared. Coordination broke down and communication went dark. In New York, the command center and its antenna were destroyed. In New Orleans, the loss of power and phones silenced the region. The lesson was redundancy. Every system needs a backup so that a single failure does not blind the entire response. And there is a simpler lesson too. The time for partners to meet each other is before the disaster, not after it strikes. So, how do you bring order to the chaos of a disaster? The core tool is the incident command system. The idea is simple but powerful. One person is placed in charge at the scene, responsible for managing and coordinating everything. Because a response has to be immediate, it is usually led by local government, the people closest to the scene who know the territory. The fire or police department often takes point, while state and federal governments stand behind them, providing technical help and backup resources. One clear line of authority when every second counts. But every community cannot improvise its own system. So the Federal Emergency Management Agency built the National Incident Management System, or NIMS. It standardizes the structures, processes, and procedures that every community should use when planning for an emergency. That way, agencies from different towns, states, and levels of government can plug into one another smoothly. It brings public agencies, private companies, and volunteers under a shared framework. And crucially, it means everyone learns their role early, in advance, rather than trying to figure it out in the middle of the crisis. Emergency planners also work from a checklist of tasks that come up in nearly every disaster. Sharing information tops the list, and the most reliable tool is often a simple two-way radio, as long as everyone agrees on a common frequency. Resources and personnel must be logged in and sent where they are needed most. Triage, sorting the injured by severity, has to happen right at the scene, and running through all of it is one blunt instruction: expect the unexpected. Be ready for the problem no one planned for, because there will always be one. None of this is free, and the federal government invested heavily. Since 2002, the CDC has put more than $9 billion into state, local, tribal, and territorial health departments. That money went into planning, training, and yearly drills. It strengthened hospitals and laboratories so they could handle a surge, and it sharpened the everyday work of epidemiology and disease surveillance, the quiet tracking that lets us notice when something is wrong. The goal was a public health system ready for a whole range of threats, not just the last one. One of the most important pieces is the strategic national stockpile. Think of it as a vast medical reserve, kept ready across the country. It holds medicines, antibiotics, vaccines, and antidotes for chemical agents, waiting for the day they are needed. And the promise is speed. In an emergency, federal personnel can deliver these supplies to people anywhere in the United States within 12 hours. It was designed to serve two purposes at once: standing ready for a bioterror attack and for a natural disease outbreak alike. For a biological threat, the whole game is catching it early, so surveillance reaches into unexpected places. Public health teams watch emergency room visits, calls to 911 and poison control, and even pharmacy sales. When a Milwaukee outbreak struck in 1993, one early clue was that drugstores kept selling out of diarrhea medicine. The watch extends beyond people too. The Agriculture Department monitors animal diseases, and for good reason. An estimated three-quarters of new human infections, from bird flu to SARS, begin in animals. The Department of Homeland Security went a step further, trying to detect an attack before anyone even feels sick. It installed air sensors in more than 30 major cities, devices that pull air through filters, which are then collected and tested in laboratories. It sounds like science fiction made real. But many scientists are frankly skeptical that the system would actually catch an attack in time. The hard truth is that a biological weapon is very difficult to detect before symptoms appear, which is exactly what makes it so dangerous. Preparedness is not only supplies and sensors, it is also the legal power to act. Public health is mostly governed by state law, and many of those laws were old, inconsistent, and written before we understood how disease spreads. In an outbreak, officials may need to isolate the sick or quarantine the exposed, and some states lack the clear authority to do so. After the anthrax letters, scholars drafted a model act that states could adopt to modernize their laws, always trying to balance individual rights against the safety of the whole community. Now, how well did all this preparation hold up? The honest answer came when COVID-19 arrived. The Strategic National Stockpile, our great medical reserve, held only about 24 million N95 respirator masks. The actual need ran into the billions. States and hospitals were left bidding against each other for basic protective gear. Government reviews since then have pushed to rebuild the stockpile toward a 90-day supply so it can never again fall so short. It was a hard, costly lesson, but it is one the system has taken to heart. Let us pull part 2 together. The failures of 2001 taught the nation that command and communication are everything. So it built systems like the Incident Command System and NIAMS to bring order to chaos. It invested billions in stronger labs, hospitals, and a national stockpile of medicine. And it learned that surveillance, the quiet watching for the first sign of trouble, is the true early warning. But systems are only tested when disaster actually strikes. In part 3, we watch that test unfold.